Hey guys, this is Gabriel from Octagon Obsessed, and today I'm gonna try and end the discussion about who the actual MMA GOAT is. Is it Jon Jones or is it Khabib Nurmagomedov? Now, if you guys have no idea about MMA and if you're a casual, you might think that 29-0 is actually better than 21 wins, 1 draw and 1 no contest. But let me tell all you casuals that this is not how MMA math actually works. I'm gonna try and present to you guys the best arguments possible for why I think who the actual MMA GOAT is. Now, before we begin, I do want to acknowledge the fact that I know a lot of people would just exclude Jones from the GOAT discussion because of the fact that he has gotten popped for drugs a few times. And let me tell you guys that it wasn't even always steroids. He got tested positive for cocaine the first time, which I don't even think is a drug that would give you any competitive advantage in a sport like MMA. But he did also get popped for picograms, but for an extremely small amount, which now is confirmed to even be legal according to the current testing standards. Now, if it actually did matter, they would have never made it okay to test positive for a small amount of picograms. So I feel like this completely washes Jon Stains' away of cheating in fights. A lot of people like to argue that it's not right to include Jones in the GOAT discussion because of the fact that he got tested positive for a small amount of picograms. But the same people would call Khabib the MMA GOAT after having defended his title just 3 times. And these are the same people that also forget that Khabib also cheated in his fight with Gaethje. He was clearly overweight, but fortunately for him, the fight was in Abu Dhabi, where he's got all his meat riders and the officials just let it slide like it never happened. The only reason why he was even pound for pound #1 is because Jones wasn't fighting around in that time. Now let's compare Khabib's accolades with Jones for a better understanding. So Khabib has fought 13 UFC fights, and I do believe the rest of the fights before the UFC matter significantly lesser than his UFC fights, merely due to the fact that what determines you're a good fighter is the opposition that you faced. And it's safe to say that his opposition before the UFC hasn't been the greatest. Now when it comes to fighting in the UFC, in my opinion, the only notable wins that Khabib has is over RDA, McGregor, Poirier and Gaethje, and most of these guys are also predominantly strikers except for RDA, who has good grappling. Now let's take a look at Jones' resume. Now I'm not even going to go through all the names in this list because the man has literally had 15 UFC title fights, which is more than even the total number of fights Khabib has had in his career. You guys need to understand that when you're fighting for the title, you're fighting the best of the best every single time. The argument that Khabib was more dominant and hasn't had any close fights and so he is the GOAT is absolutely ridiculous, because you could literally argue the same for Jones if you were to count his first 3 title defenses. He was just as dominant, never lost a round, and also hadn't been cut up until that point. The first time that he actually got cut in a fight was during his fight with Gustafsson, and this fight was his 7th title defense. Not only that, Jon has beaten Cormier, who was undefeated and who went on to be a double champ. That's top tier competition right there, because what determines how good Cormier is the fact that he's beaten guys like Stipe, Johnson and so on. So for Jon to be able to do what he did against Cormier is absolutely remarkable. Now, if you look at some of the close fights Jones has had in his career, like the Thiago Silva fight or the Dominic Reyes fight, these fights were not robberies. Even though you would like to say they are, you could call Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon a clear robbery. That's what a robbery actually is. Jones had extremely close fights, and you could present arguments that Reyes or Silva might have won. But if you actually think about it, a lot of times we have biases that we don't even realize we do. People wanted Reyes to win that fight just because of the fact that they were bored of Jones winning every single title fight. Every time Reyes would throw a punch and land, the crowd would go bananas, and when Jon landed, it was kind of expected of him. In my opinion, it was a very close fight and it could have gone either way, but Jon got his hand raised at the end of it, and that's what matters. Furthermore, Jones is now also the heavyweight champion of the world, and he won that title without even breaking a sweat. On the other hand, Khabib never even tried moving up a weight class ever. He wanted to cut a massive amount of weight and still stay in the lightweight division, almost dying in the attempt a couple times. A lot of you don't actually know this, but Khabib's father even wanted him to move up to welterweight, but he still never did, which seems a little strange to me considering Khabib always acts like someone who would take his father's word as sacrosanct. So there you have it, guys. You have Jon Jones with 15 title defenses and a double champ, youngest UFC champion ever, and on the other hand you have Khabib with 3 title defenses. You guys can decide who the GOAT is from this information. That was all for today. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.